There have been so many mass shootings, in fact, about one every day in this country this year, that tragically we act as if this is routine. We behave as if this is normal. It is not right for us to live in a nation where nobody is safe no matter where they are. We're not safe in our schools. We're not safe in our workplaces. We're not safe at movie theaters. We're not safe at spas. We're not safe in our houses of worship. And still we have done so very little in this building to respond.
The day ended in Y, which means there must have been another mass shooting in America, this time in Atlanta, Georgia. But in the hours after, while a manhunt was still ongoing, instead of merely calling for thoughts and prayers, Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock marched straight to the Senate floor and gave a profound speech, even as his children had to be taken into lockdown as a result of the active shooter situation.
In a very real sense, I feel it in my bones because my own two children were on lockdown this afternoon. I have two small children, and their schools were on lockdown responding to this tragedy. And they are there, I'm here, hoping and praying that they are safe. But the truth is, none of us is safe. I think that the unspoken assumption is that this can't happen to me. This won't happen to me. It won't happen to people that I love. But with a mass shooting every day, the truth is the chances are great. I shudder to say it, but the truth is, in a real sense, is only a matter of time that this kind of tragedy comes knocking on your door. And then in a deeper sense, I think it's important for us to recognize that it's already happening to you. You may not be the victim of a mass shooting. You may not know anyone who's the victim of a mass shooting yet, but in a real sense, it is already happening to all of us. Dr. King was right. We are tied in the single garment of destiny, caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. This is knocking on all of our doors. As a pastor, I'm praying for those who are affected by this tragedy, but I hasten to say that thoughts and prayers are not enough. And in fact, it is a contradiction to say that you are thinking and praying and then do nothing. It is to make a mockery of prayer. It is to trivialize faith. We pray not only with our lips, we pray with our legs. We pray by taking action.
And I highlight this because this is the difference, right? In the wake of Nashville, Republicans were more focused on banning young black lawmakers from supporting calls to end gun violence than they were helping to end the gun violence themselves. Hell, while the shooting was happening in Nashville, several GOP members were visiting a gun store to advocate for their rights. Meanwhile, as his kids were in lockdown, Raphael Warnock was doing exactly what his constituents elected him to do. He was fighting for them.
I'm proud of the fact that we did, after 30 years, pass some gun safety legislation here last Congress. It was a significant piece of legislation, but obviously it's not enough. 87% or more of Americans believe that we ought to have universal background checks, and still we can't get it. Think about that. In a country where everybody says we're divided, and there are deep divisions to be sure. There's disagreement on this issue to be sure, but in a country where there is 87% agreement on something, there's no movement on it in Congress. Which means that that's a problem with our democracy.
common sense gun control measures are nationally supported. Not just in blue states, but across the country, especially background checks. And he's right, it's been known that our democracy is broken. Take the mere fact that more than 50% of Americans have voted for a Democratic candidate for president in all but one election in the last 32 years? That tells you everything you need to know.
We saw it in a stark and ugly way a few weeks ago when we had two brave young legislators stand up in Tennessee, three in fact. And the same legislature that refused to do anything on gun violence came down on them with all of their might and expelled them from the legislature. We have to stand up against these anti-democratic forces at work in our country. And we have to give the people their voices back. And if we refuse to act while our children are dying, and in a moment when no one is safe, then shame on us. Shame on us if we allow this to happen and we do absolutely nothing. St. Augustine, the African bishop of the early church, said that hope has two beautiful daughters. He said they are both beautiful. Anger and courage. Anger with the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are. I'm pleading, I'm begging all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to remember the covenant that we have with one another as an American people. To stand up in this defining moment and do everything we can to protect all of us and certainly all of our children. We owe it to the people who have sent us here. I know that there are those who will look at this moment and say, politically, do you really think we can get anything done here? They will ask if this is the time, given the state of politics in our country right now. I respond with the words of Dr. King, who said that the time is always right to do what is right, and that time is right now. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.